This is Hokies All Access, produced by your official local television home of the Virginia Tech Hokies, in association with Virginia Tech Sports Properties. Hokies All Access.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Jermaine Ferrell, hoping your day is wonderful and blessed and like butter. Let's get on the roll, baby, with a little thing we like to call Hokies All Access. Now, in the opening drive segment of Hokies All Access with first quarter action, big news out of Blacksburg, where Virginia Tech midfielder and former Northside High School soccer star from Roanoke, Virginia, Daniel Pereira, was the first overall pick of the 2021 MLS Super Draft. Pereira was selected in the first round by Austin FC. And with Virginia Tech, Pereira recorded 6 goals and 6 assists in 2 years with the Hokies. Fun fact, he joins Bruce Smith and Michael Vick as the 3rd Virginia Tech athlete to go #1 overall. And we caught up with Pereira right after he heard his name called, and he's still in shock after being taken first in the draft.
I'm like 1%, like 1 out of like 1,000 players that's been drafted first of it all. And yeah, it's just a huge honor, and I can't wait to get started. Very surprised. Like a minute before the clock was on the show, I told them, they were talking about Mayaka, and my mom was like, "Oh my God, Mayaka's gonna get it." And I was like, "It's okay. Like, he's a baller. He deserves it. If he does go #1, and he's a friend of mine, so it doesn't really matter." And but then they said my name. I saw Danny Pereira pop up, and it was just crazy, unbelievable moment that I'll never forget.
On to the hoop court, women's basketball star. There's a new three-point queen in Blacksburg, and her name is Asia Shepard. Sunday afternoon, Tech's all-ACC shooting guard knocked down 4 threes and became the program's all-time leader in three-point scorers with 273 career triples to her name. The Alexandria, Virginia native owns the single-season mark of 84 set last season and is filling it up at a historic rate in her senior campaign, where she leads the nation with 54 three-pointers. Shepard owns the joint highest tally for threes in a single contest with 8. A feat that she has accomplished twice in her career. She has already eclipsed the 1,000 point mark and is ascending the Virginia Tech annals in that category as well. Currently, she's in 14th place with 1,267 points. She also ranks 10th all-time in the ACC in threes. Well, Virginia Tech men's basketball suspending Tyrese Radford indefinitely for, quote, not upholding the high standards Virginia Tech has for its students and athletes. This is a Radford. He faces for driving intoxicated and carrying a concealed weapon. That's the charges. The sophomore guard was arrested early Sunday morning and released on a $1,000 bond. All right, folks, full booth time. And I tell you what, it's always fun to do full booth. And joining me right now is Virginia Tech Hall of Famer Mike Burnup. And how are you doing on this full booth edition of Hokies All Access?
Always good when you're in the hood there, Jermaine. Everything's good.
That's scary when you say it like that, but true, as they say. Well, of course, you know, we just talked about it earlier in the show. Tyrese Radford, the redshirt sophomore guard for Virginia Tech, suspended indefinitely due to legal troubles. And Mike, obviously, a tough situation for Virginia Tech. Just your thoughts on how this will impact the team and in that situation.
Well, first of all, I feel bad for Tyrese because he's a great kid, and you know, lapse in judgment and didn't do the right thing, didn't uphold the standards of being an athlete at Virginia Tech. So that's one of those things that nobody feels worse than he does, and it's going to impact this team tremendously because you think about what he does for this team. You know, he leads them in minutes. He's second in scoring. He's second in rebounding. I mean, half of his rebounds are offensive rebounds. He's a great passer. He's a great teammate. It seems like when they need a bucket, they go to Boots to get it, or they did. And he just kind of had a knack for finding the loose ball, getting the 50-50 ball, or when his team needed the lift, he would give them the lift. And so now they're going to have to look elsewhere on the roster. And guys like Darius Maddox are going to have to pick up and play more. Maybe Joe Bamasil, who hasn't played much at all. And everybody's going to have to pick up those minutes and just try to make it work without him.
And, Mike, when you look at scheduling in the ACC, and obviously we kind of have to look at it from a COVID standpoint, but even before COVID, you know, coaches have had issues with the ACC schedule. When you look at Virginia Tech, 4 of their first 5 were at home, and now they're in a stretch where they're playing 4 of 5 on the road. And even in some cases, you have that quick turnaround. You play Saturday and you play Monday. Just overall thoughts about that scheduling, that particularly from a Virginia Tech standpoint.
Well, I think if you look through it, Jermaine, everybody probably goes through these tough stretches of the schedule. And yeah, the Hokies were top loaded, I guess, at front and the front end with some home games. And unfortunately, you know, a couple of those have been canceled. You know, the game the Hokies were supposed to play at UVA was canceled because of COVID, and the same thing happened with Boston College later. I just hope they're able to schedule those things. The schedule is so tight. There's not a lot of windows like in football when they built in an open date. You don't have that in basketball. And, you know, before you know it, you're going to be up against the wall and you're going to be right against tournament time. So Coach Young said last week that he'd be shocked if they got all the games in. So we hope that's the case. But, you know, when you build on that thing, Jermaine, because of the Boston College game got canceled, the Hokies, you remember they were at Wake Forest. They're really playing 5 of the next 6 is what they have done, played them on the road. And then when you come back, you look at the schedule coming up, you got to play Florida State and Louisville, and then you got Carolina. I mean, the schedule's just going to get brutal and more difficult as you go along.
Yeah, it's going to be some tough stuff. And one final question real quick, the ACC tournament, some of the coaches talk about maybe if you're a lock for the NCAA tournament, you don't play in the ACC tournament. Just your feelings on that. If a situation like that pops up, should teams play in the ACC tournament but forsake an opportunity for the NCAA if you hit a COVID batch at the ACC tournament?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you got to worry about the COVID situation because I think the early stuff that I heard on the NCAA tournament going to Indianapolis is you had to have like 7 negative tests before you even get to the site, and then you have to be tested every day. So you think of some of these teams that are in tournaments, their own tournaments, and they're leaving there and going right to Indianapolis in some cases. Yeah, you wonder if that might be the case, Jermaine. And I think for Virginia Tech and their purposes, you know, you want to try to play as many games as possible and try to be peaking at the right time when you're going into the big dance. But there's so many games left to be played, and so many things could change in this last 6-7 weeks of the season. It's amazing. But Selection Sunday will be on top of you before you know it, my man. You know that.
I know it's going to be right around the corner with Mike Burnup. Thank you so much for joining me this week for Full Booth, and you know we're going to catch you next week with more Full Booth.
Absolutely, Jermaine. Good to be with you.
Good deal. All right, now coming up on Hokies All Access, we share how a former Virginia Tech football player is impacting his high school coach. Stick and stay, please.
Produced by your official local television home of the Hokies. This is Hokies All Access.
And welcome back to the Maroon and Orange Express, also known as Hokies All Access. Now in our Hokies Highlights segment of Hokies All Access with second quarter action. Former Virginia Tech Hokie Bruce Arians and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just keep rolling. Arians and company will become the first team in NFL history to play a Super Bowl in their home stadium, where the Buccaneers square off with the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 55 at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa on February 7th. Arians, who lettered as a quarterback for Tech from 1972 to 1974, is no stranger to professional football's biggest game. He previously earned a ring as offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers in Super Bowl 43, and he also did it in Super Bowl 40. Interestingly enough, in that Super Bowl 43 game, a 27-23 win over the Arizona Cardinals took place at Raymond James Stadium. At 68 years, 3 months, and 21 days, he'll become the second oldest Super Bowl head coach in NFL history, trailing only Buffalo's Marv Levy, 68 years, 5 months, and 28 days. Now, Karen Loftus from our sister station in Tampa talks about Arians' impact on the Bucs in only his second season.
There's so much respect in that locker room for BA. And I have to say, you know, it is a strange season because, as I mentioned, been here a year. This is my first season. I have yet to meet BA in person or any of the players. So I feel like I'm missing that facet in a little bit as far as the day-to-day. Like, we're on group Zooms. I just had a one-on-one Zoom with BA. Nicest guy, you know, and I think that from what I've been able to take just from the group Zooms and covering him on a daily basis in that regard, he's just a cool dude and a likable guy, and he's a smart football coach. And what he's been able to do with this group of guys, and you even start beyond the players. You talk about his coaches and how he builds a coaching staff and the people that he brings in and trusts and let them do their job, and they in turn do their job with their respective position groups. And I've told this story before as far as an example of the respect that his players have for him. He has a really interesting relationship with Leonard Fournette. And, you know, Leonard is a guy who's used to being the main piece in an offense, right? And he comes to Tampa, and he's not going to be the main guy. Bruce said from the jump, there were no misconceptions. Rojo was his guy. Ronald Jones was his guy, and he said that. And Leonard's been really honest about how tough it was for him to change his mindset, and sort of a humbling experience when you used to be the guy to being a smaller role player. And he's spoken very highly of BA and how he's coached him along. He had an ankle injury, said he was about 80% for, I believe it was the Packers game, out there warming up. And BA says, no, if you're 80%, you're not going. And he said he was really upset about that. And it took Shady McCoy to talk to him and be like, listen, this is God's plan. You're fine. You know you're a good playmaker. Stay ready, be ready, keep your head up. And he said when he realized that Bruce Arians was looking out for him, it changed his whole perspective, and it gave him so much respect for his head coach that it was somebody who was actually looking out for him and a bigger plan than just, I need 100 yards from you today and whatever about the rest. So that's a really good example of sort of the respect that the players have for him. And Leonard's not the only one. It's the entire locker room.
All right, and then guess what? There are two other Hokies on the Tampa Bay coaching staff. Cody Grimm, the defensive special teams assistant, and Nick Rapone, safeties coach. Now, Grimm, he was a 4-year letter winner at Virginia Tech from 2006, 2009. And then Rapone, he played collegiately at Tech from 1974 through 1978. Now, next week on Hokies All Access, Mike Burnup was Arians' teammate at Tech, and he shares his thoughts on Arians. Meanwhile, Buffalo Bills safety and former Virginia Tech Hokie Tremaine Edmonds lost in the AFC title game last Sunday to the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Edmonds is one of 4 family members with NFL experience. Now, his brothers Terrell and Trey, also Hokies, they're currently in the league. Their dad, Ferrell, played tight end for 7 NFL seasons. Tremaine and his family have touched several people in his life growing up in Danville, Virginia. And I caught up with Tremaine's high school basketball coach and the impact Tremaine Edmonds has had on his coach and family.
I've said this a million times. It's just not coach talk. That Tremaine's a better person than he is football player. Think about what I just said. He was number 12, 13, 14 pick in the NFL draft. He's the captain on the Bills and multi-millionaire. And he's a better person, and all of them are better people than they are athletes.
Jacob Gruss was Tremaine Edmonds' high school basketball coach at Dan River High School in Ringgold, Virginia. Gruss knew from the beginning what type of athlete he was getting, and Gruss says it all started at home for Tremaine.
First of all, the first word that comes to mind when you think of Tremaine is just a freak athlete. I mean, dude is incredible. He comes from such a good family. His mom and dad, he calls mom Cookie, and Ferrell are such incredible people that, they don't play with grades. They don't play with character, and obviously they don't play with how they perform in the athletic arena.
Gruss also looked at Tremaine as the gentle giant.
And then Tremaine was the quiet one. Maine really never talked a whole lot. He just kind of went about his business, did what he was supposed to do.
Tremaine not only has impacted Coach Jacob Gruss, but also Gruss's son.
It was really cool to be sitting there on the couch watching draft night and seeing that dude walk across stage that, was in class, was in our gym all the time. And, my son's jumping up and down, screaming and yelling. He's got, a big Tremaine jersey he wears every time the Bills play. So it was just really cool. We would go up to Virginia Tech games and, Tremaine would go grab Taylor after the game. And I've got a really cool picture of him and Terrell on either side of my son Taylor. And Taylor's got the lunch pail in between. Tremaine is such a big kid and such a humble kid that after games, he would grab my son and, sit there and spend time with him, would take him down the field. It was really cool to see. And just speaks volumes to how great of people they are.
Local in Roanoke, Jermaine Ferrell, Wfxr Sports. Meanwhile, the Atlantic Coast Conference announced its all-academic team for the 2020 football season, and that list included 6 Virginia Tech student-athletes: punter Oscar Bradburn, running back Khalil Herbert, offensive lineman Brock Hoffman, linebacker Dax Hollyfield, tight end James Mitchell, and tackle Luke Tenuta. Coming up on Hokies All Access, we hear from Mike Young as he shares his thoughts about ACC scheduling. This is Hokies All Access. Welcome back to Hokies All Access with third quarter action. Scheduling is interesting when it comes to ACC play. Now, the Tech men, they started off with 4 of 5 at Castle. Now they're in the middle of a 4 of 5 game stretch on the road. And they've had one stretch where they had 2 games in 3 days. Young talking about ACC scheduling in this week's Coach's Corner.
We all have our own opinions about the schedule and, you know, how that thing could shake out better for all of us. But Jermaine, I cannot imagine having to put that thing together. So I would never say a thing. The one that really bothers me, and again, I mean, it's going to happen. Virginia and Syracuse, you know, Virginia had UVA Saturday night, or pardon me, UVA had Georgia Tech Saturday night, and they've got Syracuse tonight. Those are really hard. Those put those are stressful. We had Louisville on the road. I think we had a Saturday, Monday, or a Sunday, Tuesday, and I forget the first opponent. Pardon me, and came back here with Duke. That is not easy. It's difficult, but again. When you're dealing with 15 teams from 10 different states, it is absolutely impossible, and I'm sure that there are television considerations. So, say one word about that. You know, that thing rolls out in August or September, whatever it is. I take a quick look at it. Here's what we got. Let's go play. So that's my response there.
And coming up on Hokies All Access, David de Guzman gives us an update in the Virginia Tech wrestling team. This is Hokies All Access. And welcome back to Hokies All Access with fourth quarter action. The Virginia Tech wrestling team looking very strong on the mat this season, coming off a win over Commonwealth rival Virginia last week. And as 2 conference opponents loom this weekend, David de Guzman sat down with head coach Tony Roby to look at what makes the Hokies a top 10 team in the country.
By definition, wrestling is a high-contact sport, and it made Tony Roby's job a bit different during a pandemic.
You have to be careful of who you're partnering up with who, you know, and there's guys that have tested positive, guys that haven't tested positive, so there's a lot of kind of logistical things that you have to take into consideration.
By now, the Hokies are used to all the protocols, and so far, the already shortened schedule has been interrupted just once because of COVID-19, allowing for Virginia Tech to emerge as one of the leading contenders to win the ACC title this season.
The talent is, you know, it's considerable. It's really high. It's really exciting to look at what we have right now with young guys in the program and old guys in the program.
One of those so-called old guys is 2019 NCAA champion Mekhi Lewis, back with the Hokies after taking an Olympic red shirt to prepare for Tokyo 2020, which is now set to take place this summer. The Olympic hopeful looking better than ever, dominating opponents this season.
And that's the biggest thing for Mekhi, is to continue to separate himself from the pack. You know, I mean, he's going to be the guy that everybody's going after now. So the role has changed a little bit. You're not going to go out there and sneak up on anybody. Everybody's going to give you their best shot.
Christiansburg product Hunter Bolin picking up where he left off last year. The 2020 ACC champion ranked second nationally in his weight class and undefeated in 2021.
His development from his freshman year here at Virginia Tech has been phenomenal. He's got a certain toughness to him. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He wants to prove himself. He finds ways to motivate himself. He's very coachable. He, you know, was just really in tune with what it takes to be great in our sport.
Lewis and Bolin making up the backbone of a strong Hokies lineup that will be tested twice this weekend with matchups on the road against Duke and number 14, North Carolina. Back to you.
Thank you so much, David. To see all things Hokies, including previous episodes of Hokies All Access, we got it all for you on HokiesAllAccess.com. Well, good peeps, that does it for this edition of Hokies All Access. I'm Jermaine Ferrell. Have a wonderful and blessed day, everyone. And guess what, folks? Go Hokies!